So this is great to see you guys doing something for Julian Assange. I mean, I've never met him personally, but I understand he's an Australian citizen, and it's an indictment on this whole system to see the journey he's been through over so many years, and to think that the Australian government wouldn't step in to help protect and look after somebody who's obviously revealing the truth about aristocracies being undertaken by armies over in Afghanistan. He was obviously motivated to disseminate the truth about what's happening, and of course the lies that we're fed by mainstream media is getting worse and worse, and I do believe this is just going to get worse unless something happens to Julian. He needs to be let out straight away and brought back to Australia where he can be looked after. It's atrocious.
Free him. Free Julian. He wasn't drooling, he was speaking the truth.
Yeah, you want to say it on camera? You might be it on you.
Free Julian Assange. He speaks the truth, and he wasn't drooling. Julian, take care, big fella. Look after yourself.
Thank you.
Julian is a once-in-a-generation thought leader, and this comes from his partner. She says, I don't just say that because I love him. Millions in the US and around the world know it too. His prosecution is bad for everyone, and that's true, very true, because the world desperately needs him during this crisis of freedom and democracy. It is astoundingly wrong. It is unbelievably incorrect what the American government, or a section of the American government, is doing to Julian Assange. It is clearly wrong. Her name is Stella Morris. She's the partner of Julian Assange.
Julian Assange was a good man. He didn't do nothing wrong. We need to stop government corruption and let him free. All he did was try and do the right thing in his eyes. You people need to recognize that. Come on, Sydney, free up Julian Assange.
Free Assange.
Free Julian Assange.
Free Julian Assange. Stop bullying the world, America, England and Australia. Don't be bullies.
On the 11th of April, it will be 2 years since Julian Assange was arrested and incarcerated in the UK's high security prison Belmarsh. Julian's worst fears came true. The United States was determined to take revenge on Julian after exposure of corruption and crimes of government and big business. Prior to his arrest, his shaving gear was taken away so that an uncharacteristically long grey beard and long grey hair would be the first thing to catch people's eye upon his arrest. This prompted sketches on Saturday Night Live with Michael Keaton appearing as Julian Assange, a James Bond villain wanting to blow up the moon. Trevor Noah stated WikiLeaks released hacked DNC emails, although NSA whistleblower Bill Benny proved that the data was leaked by someone with physical access to the emails and not hacked. Noah laughed at the way Julian was arrested and carried out of the embassy. He said that Mr. Assange had helped Chelsea Manning break and crack a password to enter US government computers. This is false and misleading. Chelsea Manning worked in an Iraq army unit as an intelligence analyst and had legal access via a top security clearance. She did not need to assist and hack into the computers. In her 2013 court case, Manning testified The release files were not very sensitive, and nor were they reporting active military operations. The UN Human Rights website states, a UN expert who visited Julian Assange in a London prison says he fears his human rights could be seriously violated if extradited to the United States, and condemned the deliberate and concerted abuse inflicted for years on the WikiLeaks co-founder. Since 2010, when WikiLeaks started publishing evidence of war crimes and torture committed by US forces, we have seen a sustained and concerted effort by several states towards getting Mr. Assange extradited to the United States for prosecution, raising serious concern over the criminalisation of investigative journalism in violation of both the US Constitution and international human rights law, Melza said. Since then, there's been a relentless and unrestrained campaign of public mobbing, intimidation and defamation against Mr. Assange. According to the expert, this included an endless stream of humiliating, debasing and threatening statements in the press, in social media, and also by senior political figures, and even by judicial magistrates involved in proceedings against Mr. Assange. In the course of the past 9 years, Mr. Assange has been exposed to persistent, progressively severe abuse ranging from systematic judicial persecution and arbitrary confinement in the Ecuadorian embassy, to his oppressive isolation, harassment and surveillance inside the embassy, and from deliberate collective individuals, insults and humiliation to open instigation of violence, and even repeated calls for his assassination. We'll recall that Hillary Clinton asked, "Can't we just drone him?" Julian Assange is one of us. He's an Australian citizen. We need to protect and support him and do everything we can to ensure his release.
We are commemorating 2 years of wrongful imprisonment of Julian Assange in Belmarsh High Security Prison, a prison built for terrorists. Julian Assange is a journalist, completely innocent. We're extremely proud of being an Australian like Julian Assange. We're very proud of his integrity, his honesty, the fact that he has actually given his life, his profession, for the truth, to disclose the truth and to set up this wonderful facility called WikiLeaks, where journalists, investigators, researchers and citizens in common can actually download information, and information that is normally privileged by governments simply because it discloses war crimes, government corruption and abuse. So it is 2 years that we are commemorating now of this fateful day when Ecuador basically sold Assange for $4.2 billion. It's a huge sum, and it's simply a way of selling a human being to those who are in power. We condemn that. We condemn the fact that our government has done nothing to secure Assange's release, and in that way our government has been complicit in the fact that Assange is slowly being killed in prison. I'd like to read this quote that relates to the job of Assange, and it's from Professor Niels Melzer, the rapporteur on torture, United Nations rapporteur on torture, and he says, Julian Assange is not and has never been an enemy of the American people. WikiLeaks fights secrecy and corruption throughout the world and therefore acts in the public interest both of the American people and of humanity as a whole. And I want to say that to Mr. Biden, remind him of this. He says he is a Democrat. I ask Mr. Biden to review this prosecution, to review this endless persecution of Julian Assange, to remind himself of what Professor Niels Melzer has said, and to basically say enough is enough, let's put an end to this embarrassing prosecution. Let's bring Julian Assange back home. Thank you.
This is from former member of the European Parliament, Eva Joly. If Julian Assange is extradited, it's the end of the rule of law in the West.
Like many other good ideas, the plan to meet weekly in support of Julian Assange at Sydney Town Hall was conceived of in a pub. In late 2019, at an inner suburban watering hole, a group of Assange supporters met and discussed ways in which they could show their support for Australia's greatest exponent of free speech. A suggestion was made to gather regularly at Town Hall, given its visibility and its status as a site of protests historically. There were more than enough supporters to get it off the ground, and so on 29 November 2019, the first of many Julian Assange Sydney Town Hall gatherings was held. Tony's idea had resulted in real action, and he was joined by others who would become regular attendees alongside him, namely Karen, Adriana, Steve, Yunja, Pietro and more. The occasion was documented skillfully by Steve and can be viewed online. Billy, Diane and Matt joined the following week and would go on to become regulars. Others attend when they are able. It won't come as a surprise to those who followed WikiLeaks over the years, but the public support was tangible right from the outset, and this is readily apparent in Steve's videos. For those who don't know about WikiLeaks, it's an organisation run by an Australian named Julian Assange. Julian has made it his life's work to help people in positions of vulnerability, whether it was helping Victorian police prosecute persons suspected of distributing child exploitation material in 1993, to publishing evidence of war crimes and corruption from 2006 onwards. By revealing wrongdoing by governments around the world, we stand a better chance of making them accountable to their citizens and to their victims. It's been heartening to see the support in the community as it reveals the ability of ordinary people to remain objective in the face of relentless efforts by the media to demonise Julian. Julian has first told us, and then by his very own example shown us, that powerful corporate and political elements have an aversion to the truth and a disregard for the sanctity of human life. Regardless of the support, we do however have an important task ahead of us, and that is to explain to those unfamiliar with Julian, and even to those who support him casually, that his extradition case is of great importance. The future of freedom of speech rests on Julian's shoulders, but more importantly, his very life is at risk. To those who support truth and value human life, join us every Friday at Town Hall in Sydney from 4 p.m. and help us get Julian home. We have gathered every week for over 70 weeks consecutively, and we are resolved to gather every week until Julian is free. Thank you.
It says that if America gets away with plucking him out of the UK to die in prison, then all our freedoms are compromised. And that's an important point, because when you have a go at Julian Assange, you are having a go at our freedoms, our freedom of speech, our democracy and that sort of thing. When you slander Julian Assange, you're doing the same thing. You're having a go at all those things that are important to us. When you defame Julian Assange, you're doing the same thing. Bob Carr is known for being a foreign minister. He's known for being a New South Wales Premier.
Assange's crime, in inverted commas, is to have initiated a wave of truth-telling in an era of lies, cynicism and war. That is a quote from John Pilger.
Welcome to the 72nd Julian Assange Town Hall gathering. We stand here every Friday to bring people in Sydney greater awareness about Julian Assange, his work and his persecution. What people think about Julian has dire implications for all of us. Contrary to media narratives, it matters greatly what we all believe about him. The smearing of Julian in the mainstream media assists corrupt government officials to hide the truth about wrongdoing, which directly affects every one of us. In just 2 days' time, it will be exactly 2 years since the UK police were instructed to break international law and enter the Ecuadorian embassy in London to abduct Julian Assange, the WikiLeaks journalist who had been granted political asylum to protect him from US persecution. Julian was arrested on the basis that he had broken bail conditions. However, under international law, all people have the right to seek political asylum. And as we all know now, Julian needed this protection. He is currently being held in solitary confinement in a maximum security prison normally reserved for the most dangerous of criminals on behalf of the United States. He has experienced solitary confinement for most of this time in Belmarsh, and this is recognised by the United Nations as psychological torture. We are here fighting for justice for Julian Assange because what people believe about him really matters. Julian Assange is continually smeared, psychologically tortured and locked up for his efforts to empower us because he provided us with hard evidence. We have been lied to about atrocities done in our name. We can choose to either go along with the propaganda and accept more atrocities, or we can make enough noise to free him. We choose to make enough noise to free him. In fact, Julian's freedom relates to our freedom. If a famous and entirely ethical journalist can be treated cruelly by our governments, so can we. It matters that we all know the truth about Julian Assange, but our media are hiding this truth from us. If the mainstream media were honest, the news would be continually informing us that Julian Assange is completely innocent, that he is being mercilessly tortured for revealing the terrible crimes of powerful interests, and that decent people all around the world hold regular demonstrations calling for his immediate release. Instead, the best we can hope for is the odd snippet of distorted information telling us that it doesn't matter what we think about Julian Assange, it doesn't matter whether we like him or not, or it doesn't matter whether we agree with him or not. Well, it does matter. Julian Assange represents hope for humanity. We have been living with corrupt governments for far too long. We have been taken to unnecessary war on false pretenses for far too long, and our civil liberties have been interfered with far too much. It is becoming obvious that the powerful want to break our spirits and want to break our social ties and turn us against each other. The powerful make up rules to isolate us as though we are animals in some great experiment designed to see if they can gain our undivided loyalty and attention. We used to commonly hear that we live in a free country, but it is now very apparent that the powerful hate us having freedom. Through WikiLeaks, Julian has made it possible for ethically motivated people who have access to information of public interest to anonymously make that information available to the public without retribution that whistleblowers normally receive should their identities become known. It matters that we know it is possible to hold governments to account. It matters that we realise that if we have the truth about government wrongdoing, we have the power to hold corrupt governments to account. Our problem is that many of us are not informed well enough. Many of us don't even know who Julian Assange is or know about his journalistic achievements. This is because powerful interests see a knowledgeable public as an existential threat to their ability to control society for their purposes. False information in the mainstream media makes us vulnerable to the excesses of corrupt governments and the corporations that hold sway over them. When people unquestioningly believe false media narratives, repeat them, identify with them, act on them, or defend them, people power is diminished. If people are demonised for questioning mainstream narratives, we need to realise those narratives deserve questioning. We all need to be more questioning of what we are told and to look for the truth. It is important that we are able to listen to truly independent voices that are free to challenge accepted norms, that help empower people with the truth. We cannot allow ourselves to limit our sources of information to self-censored puppets who are paid to present narratives that facilitate our helplessness. What people think about Julian Assange is extremely important for the US empire. The evidence we have is that the US desperately wants to avoid an informed public. The journalism of Julian Assange allows us to be informed, and that is why he is a political prisoner held in the UK on behalf of the US. All voices count. Everyone's freedom to speak and hear the truth counts. Free speech is at stake. Democracy is at stake. Our freedom is at stake. It matters that we all know the truth about Julian Assange, and we must free Julian Assange. Free Julian Assange. Free Julian Assange. Free Julian Assange. Thank you.
Good evening, good day. On behalf of the Parramatta gatherings for Julian Assange and in support with the Sydney Town Hall Group, I'd like to say a couple of words on this remembrance of the second anniversary of Julian's imprisonment in Britain. Firstly, in the words of Scott Ludlam, our former Australian senator who has done a great deal to help the cause. Quote, "In this mockery of due process, endless delay is the point. Our friend is already serving jail time for charges under espionage law that may never even be heard in an open court. Every day this sadistic process drags out is another day that Julian Assange spends without sunlight, friends, family and freedom. And that's the whole point." That was quoting from former Senator Scott Ludlam. The next quote will be from journalist Mary Kostakidis. Quote, "Julian is in great danger now. We cannot stand back and let this happen. They talk about bracket creep. This is human rights creep. It's going to get worse and worse for us, the citizens of this country.
We are all Assange.